You hear us talk about Floyd's of Leadville on this show as if it was the only thing going in the world of CBD. Fact of the matter is, there are tons of companies who have jumped into this growing market.
What? You don't say. It's pretty easy to see just by driving down the road. Pizza place there used to be, now CBD shop. We're being bombarded with billboard advertising from all kinds of companies touting their CBD products. So yeah, Floyd's is not alone.
So what makes Floyd's stand out? Well, first, it comes from one of our own, a cyclist. And we like keeping it in the family.
Yeah, Floyd Landis knows the pain cycling can create, and he wanted to find effective and a healthy way to address it. That's why Floyd's uses the best CBD that they can get their hands on.
The other standout is value. I know someone who consults people on pain management and CBD, and she was really impressed with the Floyd's line of CBD products and their prices.
Yeah, now CBD, and especially Floyd's, is not cheap. And we're saying for quality CBD, you are still getting a good value. And some of that comes down to Floyd's not buying billboards all over town and focusing their costs on developing quality products.
Floyd's focus on value means it can extend to our listeners a discount. So head to floydsofleadville.com, check out all the Floyd's fine CBD products, and use the code FATTY at checkout for a 15% discount. And again, thanks to Floyd's of Leadville for being the title sponsor of this show.
3, 2, 1.
Leadville, the podcast for the 100-mile mountain bike race presented by Floyd's of Leadville. This is season 4, episode 26 of the show that breaks down, builds up, gets you ready, and freaks you out for the highest and hardest one-day mountain bike race in the country. I'm Michael Houghton, Hottie to most.
And I am Fatty, and we are into bonus episodes now, folks. This episode is a continuation of the last couple episodes we did. Hopefully you caught the interview we did with new race director Tamara Genlink. This time, we're moving a little bit up the lifetime ladder and speaking with President of Events and Media, Kimo Seymour. Kimo, among other things, is a consistent sub-8 Leadville racer. But he had to bow out this year, and there's a pretty scary reason why.
In addition to overseeing the Leadville Race Series, Kimo is managing Unbound Gravel, Crusher and the Tusher, and recently added to his list, Sea Otter.
Yeah, he is another lifetimer with a very full plate. And meantime, we are keeping DNA's plate full as well as we get ready to share and sell our 2022 Season 5 Leadville kit. In the last episode, we asked you to vote for your favorite over at leadville.fm/jersey. And we're pretty gratified that hundreds and hundreds of you actually did take the time to choose your favorite. So thank you for that.
So now you're going to need to wait for that big reveal while DNA takes the jersey that won the most votes and designs a full kit and t-shirts around it.
Yeah, the great thing is that will not be a long wait for you. Between now and next episode, DNA Cycling will be designing bibs, arm warmers, socks, and t-shirts, as well as putting together a whole working online store for us to sell all those things. And this is not going to be any real work for Hottie or for me because, well, for one thing, I've got a day job.
And I'm headed to Sea Otter. But by the next time Fatty and I get together, we'll have a full kit and hope to see many of our listeners wearing it at the 2022 Leadville starting line.
Yeah, and meantime, if you have a kit of your own you want to design for Leadville or a club or company jersey, or for any reason really, head over to dnacycling.cc and choose the custom apparel menu. I guarantee they will give you the same deluxe treatment the Leadville podcast gets.
From design to creating a store to fit kits to production to fulfillment, DNA Custom makes ordering custom cycling apparel the easiest shopping experience you can have. Our guest this episode is Lifetime's Kimo Seymour. And I'll say, Fatty, Kimo has quite the impressive resume. He is, as you've said, Senior VP and President of Events and Media for Lifetime. That means he's responsible for the production of 30-plus bike races, triathlons, running events with the Lifetime Athletic Events portfolio. He also manages 7 production offices around the country with 30 plus full-time staffers. Previously, he was president of Athlinks. They're the folks that do the timing. He spent 4 years as president and owner of Red Rock Events, 13 years as president and owner of a real estate development company. Add to that, he's an ASU grad in finance. This is a guy, if you run into him, deserves a little respect, I would think. Well, the last time I saw Kimo, let's say the way I treated him, I'm surprised he even agreed to come on this show. There I was at Twin Lakes Alternate, busily preparing your feed, when up walks a person in a Lifetime jacket and says, "Hey, hottie, it's Kimo." He was clearly trying to initiate a little banter, fatty, and I was clearly having none of it. I was too consumed with following your feed instructions to take a few minutes to talk with the head of all of racing for Lifetime. Luckily, he has accepted my apologies, and like a true champ, totally understands I was trying to execute a very important job.
Well, I'm just glad you had your priorities straight. I am clearly more important than Kimo. It's super nice of him to agree to come on, despite you dissing him pretty seriously. Seeing Kimo in a feed zone at a Leadville race, I don't think that's ever happened before, unless he was, going through it at 28 miles an hour. He is racing on race day. We get into why he was at the feed zone at the Leadville 100 this year, and some of the tough moments that surrounded this year's race, crew limitations, wave starts, and whether those changes are going to stick. We talk about that and a lot more with our guest, Lifetime President of Events and Media, Kimo Seymour. You've been a huge part in the Leadville 100 for a long time. You have finished how many times?
Held in 13 years now.
13.
Yeah, the irony in it, this is the first time I've ever been standing on the sidelines. First time I've been able to just watch the start, and actually jumped in the lead vehicle and took them out to the, that first right-hand turn on the dirt down where you cross the railroad tracks, and then got to check out how the wave starts went, and then got to bounce around the course, see people coming off a power line, and then headed out to Twin Lakes, went over to Lost Canyon Ranch where I ran into Hottie. And so it was kind of fun. I got to spend the day bouncing around the course and actually see what the finish is like, and spend some time rooting for other people. It was great. A
whole new perspective on the race for sure. And I want to go back to some of the things that you're talking about, waves, and seeing it from not necessarily a spectator's perspective, because you were working that day, but from a non-racer's perspective. But I want to talk about really why you were not racing. This has been a hard year for everyone, but perhaps extra hard for you. Can you talk to us about why were you not racing?
Well, I had some health issues, as I think I shared with you earlier, and back in April, unfortunately, some way, not quite sure how, but I somehow contracted a staph virus or bacteria that turned into something called sepsis, and ended up in the hospital and got into my spine. And long story short, ended up having to have spinal surgery, having my spine fused, 3 vertebrae fused, and so it was, it was eye opening. I spent the last 10 years with Lifetime, and 4 years prior to that with Red Rock, trying to do things to help people live a healthy way of life, because I really believe in a healthy lifestyle. And I think I practice what I preach, and managed, as you mentioned, 13 years doing Leadville. And boy, it was an eye-opener to have a setback like that. We all have little injuries and things that happen here or there, but this one was kind of big. It was a pretty close call for me. And so I have a little bit different perspective on it. And it was pretty tempting. I got back on the bike a couple months ago and have, been lucky enough to be able to start riding again. And I got to tell you, a week before the race, it was pretty tempting to jump back in, but I think it would have been a foolish move. So I've got to let my body heal. It's going to take a while. It's going to take a couple years to get over the infection and to make sure that it doesn't come back. So yeah, so it's been an eye opener for me.
as you know, and maybe some of our listeners know, my wife is a hospital nurse. And when I think it was Michelle Duffy who said, with your permission, what was going on at the time it was going on, my wife, who, is a good gauge of these kinds of things, she was super concerned that this wasn't just something that was an annoyance, a nuisance, even, a long road back. This was something that was, I don't think I'm exaggerating to say, it was mortally dangerous. And you were fortunate to be with us now, is kind of my understanding, that it wasn't a certainty that you were going to make it through this. Is that right?
Well, that's what they tell me now. At the time when you're going through it, and something like that, I didn't realize it. The irony is, I was dealing with a lot of pain and I was pretty out of it while I was, that first few days in the hospital in the ICU. I think, unfortunately, my wife is the one that dealt with the brunt of it, because they're telling her, hey, you ought to make sure your affairs are in order. And, she's not sure I'm going to be there the next day when she comes back, So I think, emotionally, it was a lot harder on my wife, Julie, and my kids, Kai and McKenna, not knowing. For me, you're kind of doped up and out of it and not realizing exactly how serious it is, So I know in hindsight how serious it was. And I wish there was something that was some learnings from it. I don't. It happens to people. It's one of those kind of uncontrollable, how it gets, how you get a staph, bacteria into your blood. Nobody really knows for sure. They can only speculate, if you got I got a little cut on my foot or had your teeth cleaned, or, there's all kinds of ways that you can get this stuff into your system. But boy, when it gets to it and it wreaks havoc with your body, you're kind of putting your life's in the hands of those doctors. And I had an amazing team here in Boulder, especially on the infectious disease side, and then the neurosurgeon that did my surgery. And he had to go in there and clean this stuff out of my spinal cord and take out a couple discs and fuse it all back together. And so I feel lucky to be here, but it was a nail biter there for a little bit.
Yeah, no question. And I will say, of course, this is a podcast, so people can't see, but you look fantastic. And from what I understand, you are back on the bike, which shows that your healthy way of living, I would say, has probably helped you accelerate your recovery to a great degree. That said, you and I share texts from time to time, just on a friendly basis. And you mentioned, as I was asking, because I didn't know how well you were doing, is there a chance you're going to race Leadville? You said, no, not this year. This is, I've definitely had a real perspective shift. And I think that it is worthwhile, especially in the lights of a pretty scary Leadville 100 this year for everyone. To hear, how has your perspective shifted? Are you still thinking of yourself as a racer? Is this something that you try to put aside? Everyone has to confront stuff like this from time to time. And you are, in many ways, just like, every Leadville racer. You're someone who's done this a lot of times and put a lot of your heart and soul into a one-day event in Colorado.
My perspective, I think the big change in my perspective is now I've had the opportunity to see it from a spectator's perspective, which shame on me. I probably, I'm in this business. I probably should have done that before now. And so maybe this was God's way of telling me I need to sit on the sidelines and see what everybody else goes through. Because I have a new perspective, especially for the team and how hard our team works. You said earlier, you made a comment earlier, well, this year you were working. I wasn't working. The team that we have that does all the work on these events, they're amazing. They joke that I walk around and shake hands and kiss babies, and get to, I got to get out there and see it from a spectator's perspective. They have it so under control. We have such an amazing team. And so I definitely have a different perspective on thinking about how, and you've heard me talk about this, the trick in our business is how do you create really, really long-lasting, experiences that leave long-lasting impressions on people's lives. And you all know that, boy, for a lot of people, most people that come to do Leadville, it leaves a long-lasting impression on their life. And it's not just the hard course. It's not the fact that they rode 100 miles. it's everything that's a part of that entire experience. It's the pre-race meeting. It's the walking around town and hanging out in that in the middle of those beautiful mountains. It's all the people, boys. I mean, Hadi, where you and I were standing out there. I mean, that's kind of a pop-up aid station. That's not even one of the main aid stations. That's a pop-up aid station. And there were, I don't know, there were 1,000 people out there. I mean, there's hundreds of people out there. The energy and the excitement, you feel it for a few seconds when you're riding through on the bike. But when you can be out there and you see the emotion in the crews and the spectators and the athletes as they're coming through and they're seeing their families, and that's, I think, what's given me a different perspective. Just being able to be there and be on the sidelines, I think, really, I have a deeper appreciation for the experience out there. Am I going to be racing again? I'll tell you, I sure hope so. I'm not going to lie to you. I've been coy in the past about, at times, am I going to commit to coming back the next year? Partly because I just don't like I don't like that feeling that the way I work. Once I'm committed, I'm all in. I'm putting all my time into it. I'm putting every extra moment I have. I'm putting in miles and trying to get in shape and get healthy and every summer. And so that's why I'm a little non-committal at times. But I'll tell you now, I'll be back. I don't know if it'll be next year. We'll have to kind of see how the health goes. But I'll be back. I love that event and a lot of our events. But yeah, that one's really got, seven more, I think, to go to get that 20-year buckle. I got to figure out how to get there. We'll see.
Well, good to hear that you'll be back. And there's not a day that goes by, Kimo, that I don't mention the word Leadville. I've been there 10 times or something like that, and it just comes up in conversation at least once a day, every day of my life. Now, part of that's because I do a podcast, but part of that is most of that is the impact that Leadville has on everyone's lives. That's what makes the event so great. Well, let's talk about some of the things you did get to see this year from your new vantage point, my blow-off notwithstanding. And we'll start at the start, the wave starts. What do you think those are a permanent part of the Leadville future, the Leadville Trail 100 future?
Hadi, I'll tell you, I think I came on here 2 years ago and told you that I was working to get wave starts in. There is something magical about the mass start. And this is one where Ken Klober and I tend to disagree. I don't disagree with him that it is magical. But what's happened with it's different when you get to where we this year, 1,400 riders. If some years we're at 15, 16, 1,700 riders. As I mentioned earlier, I'm always thinking about the experience, and the entire experience doesn't have to be amazing. But if you can fix little pieces here and there and constantly be tweaking, I think that's how we improve. And I talked to you a couple of years ago about wanting to do the wave starts because I wanted to improve. And I'd never seen it. I'd never been there. I'd never felt it, but I just heard about it for years. It was not a great experience for all those riders that weren't in the front 100 when they got to the bottom of St. Kevin's. And so I might flip this question around and ask, Fatty's perspective here on this, but I will tell you that I think if everything I've heard, it dramatically improved that first 10 miles of the race. It was safer. We didn't have, pileups and crashes going over that first hill on 6th Street as we roll down and then roll up that first hill. Every year I've heard a pileup in the group. And I think breaking it up, I think having people riding with, in smaller groups of people that are like ability, which the corrals help us kind of get people in those with people of likability, and then starting them a couple minutes apart. I think spaced it out, and from what I'm hearing, it really was an improved experience, at least through St. Kevin's. So, if I have my way, I think that's an improvement for the race. It does take away some of the magic of a completely mass start, but. And I think we have to, by doing that, I think we have to, we do need to go kind of look back at how the cutoff times, the adjustments to the cutoffs impacted people. I think there was some questions about whether we adjusted those right, and we can tweak that next year. But all in all, I think it's the right thing to do, and I hope that we're allowed to keep doing it. And we talked about it 2 years ago. We we were in the process of trying to get that approved. And at the time, the sheriff just didn't approve it because it's, shutting down that road out of town for 20, 25 minutes. And so so this year, it sounds like that they were fans of it, and it sounds like they're going to let us do it again. So
yeah, well, if you pitch it in the name of safety, I mean, the sheriff eventually, I think, will hopefully see the light on that, because it makes for a safer rollout. That's for sure. I'm with Ken. I love the nostalgia. I love the mass start, the feel of the mass start. But then again, I come from a crit and road racing background. I had no problem, getting around riders. So we are the minority. The wave starts will keep things safer, and the sheriff will probably see it that way too. I want to talk about another change and ask whether you see this as a permanent part of the future for the LRS. And it did cause, I think, some frustration and some confusion for racers and their crews, and that was the limitation on crew passes. We had crew passes actually for the first time this year, not just, vehicle passes, but there was actual passes for racers. They were given 2 each to hand out to crew. Do you see that as a permanent part going forward for the Leadville Trail 100 and for the run too? I think you did it for the run as well.
Yeah, we did, Hadi, and I think that's not a choice that we make. That's that's been mandated by the Forest Service, and in trying to limit the number of people that are out at the aid stations, and the issue is the parking, as you know. And so, with some of the congestion out there, it has a pretty big impact, both out at Pipeline and out at Twin Lakes. That's why you're seeing so much overflow out where you and I were at Lost Canyon Ranch. And so, I think it's likely that they are going to ask us to limit crews in the future. We're exploring, options for to bring in more shuttle buses and just provide shuttling, and that'll alleviate the parking issue. It's not really the number of people; it's really the parking and the number of vehicles. So it really impacts us on the run. If you've ever been there for the run and try to go to Twin Lakes. It's challenging out there. So Twin Lakes is I think we were parking people 2 miles away, and they were walking 2 miles along the highway at Twin Lakes to get into the town to the aid station. So I think it's likely that's going to be that they'll request that we do that again. And a little frustrating, I know, for the crews, but necessary to make sure we stay in good graces with the Forest Service.
Right. Very important to stay in good graces with Forest Service, and I would say with the locals. And that is something that I would like to talk about a little bit is, as I'm walking around town, it seems like, all of us racers know each other and we're friendly. I don't necessarily 100% get the same sense from Leadville locals. What can, I guess, we as racers and you as Lifetime do to make sure Leadville loves us back the way we love this town and this race?
Great question. And my perspective on it, Eldon, is that, first off, I had a good conversation with the mayor. I think it was at the 100 run, actually. And when I asked him, I said, is the feedback that we get from locals in that town, some of the, I've always considered it the vocal minority. I've never believed that it's the majority of people, because a lot of people that I talk to and know love the race series, love that the athletes are there. Whether it's a race weekend or not, that town is packed with athletes. And it's, and they be honest with you, they had a fabulous summer in 2020 in the height of COVID. I was talking to Brian from Cycles of Life, and he was saying they had a better year in 2020 than they did in 2019. And so, athletes are coming to town, whether there are races or they are there for the races or they are there to train or just to experience Leadville because of what they've heard about Leadville because of the race series. And, the mayor was telling me, he said, I truly believe, he truly believes that is the vocal minority, but it's an important voice. And so I think what the athletes can do is number one, be respectful. You see athletes, if they're parking in the wrong places, if they're dropping trash when they're out there pre-riding or during the race when they're on course, it's being respectful of the town and, supporting the local businesses, but being respectful. That's what the athletes can do. What Lifetime can do, and I think the Leadville Race Series can do, we just continue to invest in the community. We have done, as you know, we've invested heavily through 2 different charities, and we do some amazing things in the community. And maybe we need to do a little bit better job of sharing some of the things that we're doing. Sometimes I think we're a little bit humble and just kind of quietly go a little too quiet about doing some of the fun things, the amazing things we're doing to support that community through both the Leadville Trail Legacy Foundation and the Lifetime Foundation. But hundreds of thousands of dollars we're donating, or being donated from our athletes mostly, to go back and support that community, to support the programs that the Leadville Trail Legacy Foundation supports, the toy drive every year at Christmas for all the kids, the scholarships that they give away to every single kid that graduates from the high school. Over this last couple of years, going in and revamping the entire Lake County school lunch program through the Lifetime Foundation, and then running a COVID meals program all the way through all last spring and last summer, 2020 spring and summer, to feed all those kids through the pandemic. So there's lots of good things we're doing. We're just not doing a great job of making sure everybody in the community knows how many other things we're doing to support the community.
We talked, first of all, congratulations on the hiring of Tamara Genlink. We got to meet her. We've interviewed her for the show as well. She's terrific. We love her ideas. We love the fact that we want to congratulate Lifetime for hiring a woman. Mara Lee was the first race director of the LT 100, and now you have Tamara. We think that's great. We're very happy for that. Tamara described the year as a mixed bag for her, from her perspective, mostly because of the tragedy we had to deal with on course this year. She noted that, and so did Fatty, that there were a higher number of crashes this year. And of course, we had the fatality on course this year too, which made things very tough on everyone involved in the race, the Leadville Race Series. I wanted to ask you, though, what does Lifetime do going forward regarding that crash, the fatal crash, and what's your message to the race community about what happened that day on the second Saturday in August?
I think I think we need to honor that gentleman, and his family has asked that we not release his name, at least up till now. So I think we need to honor him, and we certainly don't need to minimize what happened, because that's an awful situation. And boy, what a terrible situation. I was there with Tamara and Mike Melly when we had to let the family know that this gentleman had passed away out on course, and just awful situation. And Tamara was I'll tell you, she was just a rock. We are so excited to have her. She's going to be amazing. I think she's well respected in the community. I think, Mike Melly did a phenomenal job of finding her and almost convincing her to come to work for us. I think, we talked to her a couple years ago, and I think she just was at a point in her life she wasn't ready yet. So I'm really happy to have Tamara on board, and really looking forward to seeing what she can do with the series, especially next year as she gets into her first full year. But, back to your question, Hadi, about the situation with the fatality, I will say I almost feel like we're fortunate that it hasn't happened. That, to my knowledge, this is the second fatality in 38 years of the Leadville Race Series. And unfortunately, there was one that you're both familiar with about 5 years ago, a gentleman that had a heart attack, I believe, on course, on top of power line on the way back up there on Sugarloaf. And this gentleman this year, my understanding is that it was a high speed impact, descending St. Kevin's. Unfortunately, he didn't make it, as we all know. And, the message is, it probably doesn't change. It probably just gets amplified, that you have to be careful out there. This is, we do this as a means of helping people, as I said earlier, helping people get healthy, helping people live a healthy way of life. There's nothing healthy about an accident like that, unfortunately. And it's terrible that we have to deal with things like that, but inherently there is risk in what we're doing, and we have to, people have to understand. I think generally people understand that, and they know that, you're bombing down some of these hills that, you might hit I'm guessing people hit 40 miles an hour coming down St. Kevin's. And you both know there's some of those little kind of whoops in there that can kind of buck you over the handlebars if you're not careful at that kind of speed. And there's some turns, some right-hand turns, and it's a fall off. And I don't know the exact location. I just know that, it was a really unfortunate situation. We had some amazing riders that stopped to help him. Every time there's a serious accident, it's amazing how many riders will stop to help. And, their good human nature that comes out in people to stop and help someone like that in a time of need. And it's pretty amazing. So, we always look at these situations and think, how could we have done something better? Could we have gotten someone there, paramedics there a minute quicker? Should we have more paramedics on course? Should we have more communication points on course? We always reflect and look for how can we improve. In this situation, I don't know that there's much we could have done better, but it is just an unfortunate situation. So if anything, we amplify that message about how you have to be careful out there. You know that coming down St. Kevin's, coming down the backside of Sugarloaf, going down Powerline on the way out, and coming down Columbine. I mean, Columbine's one where there have been accidents over the years when, how thick that pack is riding up, and those lead riders are coming down, and they're coming down at 30, 40 miles an hour, and it's a 1-lane road. It's really a 2-track. And it's amazing there aren't more accidents there, and people are, have to be cautious, and we have to just amplify that message.
There is a certain irony to what I would say some of the course changes are. Specifically, St. Kevin's is a lot faster on the downhill than it used to be because it has been graded and it is fast and fun to go fast now. And that it has made it so that there is a temptation to, open it up, to take your hands off the brakes. And that's true as well on Powerline. Now, the bottom half of Powerline is so much faster than it used to be. And with that comes the possibility, and I guess an increased probability of, because you're going that much faster, because you feel like you can, of more accidents and more, more tragic accidents. So I think messaging is the right thing. It's letting people know that the seconds that you make up on a sound barrier breaking descent are not really going to affect whether you finish sub 12 or sub 9. They can affect whether you finish at all.
That's true. Yeah, and I don't want to. I really don't know the circumstances. I don't want to assume this gentleman was going too fast or anything. You don't know. I mean, the slightest, as slightest little thing can cause an accident, and it's a tragic event. And I feel for the family. I've been in touch with friends of the family, and we've done some things to help them in their memory and to honor him. And it was his 4th time at Leadville. He was on pace to get a big buckle and knew it. His crew said that the last time they'd seen him, that he knew he was on pace to be able to break the 9 hours. And it's really unfortunate, but I'll tell you the community, the Leadville race community, it was amazing how many people ended up knowing him. And it is, in the end, even with 1,500 riders, it is a small, tight family. As Ken and Marilee say, it is a tight family, and it impacted so many people. We stayed there with the family for probably 3 hours that evening, and I couldn't believe how many people came around that knew him and knew his family. And it just tells you how special. I mean, how many races do you go to where it just feels like your entire family comes to support you in a time of tragedy like that? It shows you how special the Leadville Race Series family really is.
Again, Fatty and I want to extend our condolences to the friends and family of that racer who died on course. It was a tough day on course. And after talking to Tamara and Kimo about it, it sounds like the race series is giving rider safety a full review to make sure everything in their power was handled properly.
Yeah, and rightly so. We want to remind everyone again to do what Tamara told us at the racer meeting and look out for each other. Race hard, train hard. Yes, but race and train safely first.
Okay, like I said, the last time I saw Kimo Seymour was in a feed zone. Very important things were going on there in that feed zone. Most notably, I was working off notes for FF, Fatty's Feeds. And here's a rundown of the nutrition for both outbound and inbound. 8 electrolyte capsules, 2 packages of chews, 1 bottle with GooTab, 9 gels. This was just what I gave you, Fatty. There were other feeds out in course, though, plus whatever you rolled with. But all of it, the capsules, the chews, the gels, came from one place.
All of it. Yep. And that is the feed. When you have a race nutrition plan as complicated as mine, then it is great to have a place that can meet all of the specifics that Hadi just outlined. And that's what the feed can do. Their website is the place where you can mix and match all manner of calories and hydration and anything else that you need. You want bars, you want scratch, the feed can do everything. Goos and Shuroctane, again, the feed.
And it doesn't have to be a complex feed like Fatty's. Melissa, Fatty's daughter, just needed a bottle in both directions, but the scratch that was in that bottle came from the feed. So to put your custom nutrition plan together, you know where to go. And remember, it's thefeed.com/Leadville to get a 15% discount on all your orders. Well, I finally saw one, Fatty, the new Envy road bike out in the wild. Oh, you haven't heard, folks? Yes, Envy, the maker of the finest carbon wheels, bars, and stems, now makes bikes.
Yeah, Hadi, I have also seen one of those. It was just beautiful. But yeah, Envy doesn't really do a lot of tooting of their own horn. Probably that's why they keep hiring us, because we're happy and proud, in fact, to give a huge shout out to Envy whenever we can. And those new road bikes are worth shouting about.
Here's the deal. 99% of carbon bikes are made far away in a factory. They arrive at your bike shop or via consumer direct, and then it's up to the rider to find a way to fit the bike.
Yeah, Envy takes a different approach by making bikes that fit the customer. With both Envy road models, carbon tubes are cut to length based on the size of the rider. This eliminates the need for a ton of spacers under a stem or an extreme stem length or a strange amount of seat post coming out of the frame.
By maintaining normalcy with stem lengths and heights and seat post lengths, the bike is going to behave like the engineers intended it to, and that's what you get with Envy.
Yeah, so if you're thinking about a road bike for the off-season, think about Envy. And also plan ahead, because they're a couple of years out, I understand. They have 2 road models, race and endurance, and you can find them at Envy. That's ENVE.com. Start dreaming.
More now with Lifetime President of Media and Events, Kimo Seymour, as we get into expansion of qualifiers, the UCI expanding into gravel, and Lifetime expanding into Monterey, California. Okay, why don't we broaden out a little bit and talk about Lifetime here for a second. Lifetime made some big news in the summer or spring. Summer it was, with the purchase of Sea Otter. I'm going to Sea Otter, by the way. I might be there by the time this podcast comes out. Tell us about Sea Otter. What do you see? What did you see in Sea Otter there, Kimo? And what do you folks hope to do with it?
Well, I just wanted to blow you guys' minds. That's all.
It did.
I thought it'd be good for giggles. Good for raising some eyebrows, huh?
I will say that I was texting you about something else, and you said, sorry, can't talk right now, working on something big. It will blow your mind. And then a few days later, when I saw that press release, I says, oh, and you're like, what do you think? And obviously huge, interested, for reals. What is the Lifetime vision for a race that feels a lot different than the ones that I think fit more conveniently into the Leadville Race Series bucket that, I traditionally think of?
Yeah, it's, Sea Otter, what I saw in Sea Otter, what I look for in a lot of different, a number of the different events that we've acquired over the years, something that is, someone's created a really iconic brand that has a really amazing experience. Like, start there. And then you look at, demand and how it's grown. And Frank, he started it about 30 years ago, done an amazing job of turning that into, it's really turned into a lot more than just a bike race or a bunch of bike races. It has turned into kind of the industry event, as you both probably know. And And so the opportunity there, with you and where we all talk about, when we get on here and, we all talk about the Leadville Race Series, but that's just one. Leadville's very important. It's obviously near and dear to me and near and dear to Lifetime and all of us and our family. But it's one of the many really great events that we put on. And when we look at cycling and the reach that we have now in cycling, I saw sea otter as an opportunity to just reach a whole lot more people. I think, we reach a certain audience with the Leadville Race Series. We reach a different audience with Schwamigan that took place this past weekend. And by the way, congratulations to Melissa for winning that one. That was a big one. We see different, we reach different audiences. We have a different appeal with every event. And this is one that, gosh, it is just so broad. Everything from mountain bike to cyclocross to kids to BMX to downhill to Grand Fondo to e-bikes it's got such a broad reach, and it reaches such a big audience. And then even beyond the people that are out there to participate and ride a bike, 60, 70,000 people a year just walk through the festival. I mean, it's the Woodstock of cycling. And and that festival is just amazing, and the energy is just so fantastic. And so, it took a few years. You probably saw some of the interviews I did comments I made that, I worked with Frank for close to 4 years on that deal. And it came down to him really feeling like we could take what he'd created, as he wants to kind of plan on kind of moving towards retirement over the next few years. We'd like to take and just and continue the growth of what he had created there. So we're excited to have it it'll become kind of the hub, for lack of a better analogy, the hub, of our cycling, the cycling piece of our events business.
Let's talk a little bit about qualifiers. There are a number of them. There aren't any that are close to me. So what are you doing about that? And when I say close to me, I'm talking about Utah.
Well, I'm going to make Crusher and the Tusher a qualifier. How's that?
Are you serious?
No, not at all.
Oh, come on. I was like, I was going to be like, okay, so we're moving that to the beginning of the show. Oh, that was mean. No. That was just mean.
Sorry, Burke. Burke probably just had a cow.
Well, I think, Fatty, the real blind spot for qualifiers is our friends in the Southeast.
Sure.
I mean, we've heard from folks in Florida, Georgia, all that region of the country, Kimo, that, man, it's really hard for them to, if they don't get in by lottery, to find a way into the Leadville Trail 100. And I think I was surprised at the number of listeners that Fatty and I had come up to us here this year that were from the Southeast. I mean, you folks have a draw down there. Is there any movement as far as trying to find a qualifier for that region of the country?
The answer is yes. And I think I've come on before and told you that we've had a focus on finding the right location, the right venue, the right course in the Southeast. And I'm going to be honest with you. I'll take responsibility. Melly did a bunch of really good work. Jeremiah Bishop helped us out, did some scouting of some variety of different courses back in the spring. And it landed on my plate to get down there and spend some time in those markets. And then to be honest with you, with my health setbacks here in the spring and not being able to travel, I haven't been able to get to it. So it's come back to the forefront, and it is important. And so I think you're more likely, Fatty, to see us come up with a qualifier in the Southeast before we come up with another qualifier in your neighborhood. For a while, you're probably going to have to continue to pick between, not that you need to qualify, but you're going to, the people in your area, Utah, are probably going to have to pick between something like Silver Rush or the Stage Race or even the Tahoe Trail 100. We'll continue with that. And so, yes, there will be I'll commit that there will be a qualifier in the Southeast. Part of the delay this year, the second delay this year was, with coming back out of COVID, we were a little had a little cold feet on trying to get something done and launched this year. And just the fall got stacked up with events, as you can see looking at the calendar, with everything that got canceled in the spring and pushed to the fall. All around the country, it is busy this fall. And so I'm a little skeptical on whether it makes sense to do something in the Southeast next fall, because I don't know how many events are going to stay in the fall. They'll be curious to see over the next year, with COVID, as it hopefully starts to trail off and we get back to a little bit more, semblance of normal, will race directors that have historically held their events in the spring go back to the spring next year, or will they play it safe for 2022 and keep them in the fall? I think that remains to be seen. So the timing of it is still up in question. Timing, location, venue still in question, but we are working on it.
Yeah, it is an odd time to be approaching local governments about new mass participation events. I mean, they're obviously going to be a little hesitant right now. If you have an established event, it's one thing, but hey, we'd like to bring, 2,000 people into your community and race them and have them gather in one spot. Local governments might be like, oh, maybe not for right now. So I get it. Yeah, maybe a little hard to get a new event going. So let's talk about your existing events. And I want to talk in particular about two of them. That's Whiteface and Tahoe Trail 100. Now, those kind of fall under the Lifetime banner as in their qualifiers, but I believe they're run by Euphoria Productions, if I'm not mistaken. I've sensed that the riders who participate in those events, they're a bit frustrated right now with the lack of communication from those organizers, from those promoters. What can you tell us about what's Lifetime's relationship with Euphoria? Do you keep your thumb on them? How do you manage those two events in particular?
Hadi, I think the thing I can say is that we've had a good relationship with Euphoria for many years now, and they've obviously produced Austin, Austin Rattler, Wilmington Whiteface, and Tahoe Trail 100. We've made the decision that it would be best if we bring those events back in under our umbrella. So this year, Austin Rattler will be produced by Lifetime again, and we're bringing that one in-house with some support from Euphoria, but we're taking back responsibility for that one. Next summer, I believe Tahoe comes back in under the Lifetime banner next summer. I believe Euphoria is going to produce Wilmington Whiteface next year. I don't know as of today whether they are going to continue producing it after next year. So at this point, I'll just tell you that our plans are we are going to take back ownership of and control of Austin Rattler and Tahoe Trail 100. We've also done the same with Barn Burner, which just happened this past weekend. We'd like to go back and double down and invest in those events and put a little bit more back into them. I think they need a little bit of our team's love and support, and so we intend to do that. We intend to bring those back in under the Lifetime banner, reinvest in the experiences there, and really focus on those three over the next couple years. Those will become ours again. Again, not sure what will happen with Wilmington Whiteface at this point.
The other big news that happened here recently is the UCI has announced a Gravel World Series and World Championships. This is not totally unexpected. We kind of heard these rumblings for a while that the UCI wanted to somehow get involved in the growing part of the industry, which is gravel. And of course, Lifetime has a vested interest in gravel. It certainly fits what you folks love to do. You're the owners of Unbound and Crusher and the Tusher, two major gravel events. But geez, Kimo, we've been getting along fine without the UCI, without USAC. I mean, at the LT100, more than 25 years with no need for a sanctioning body. Unbound, 15 editions of that. Never a sanctioning body. And not to say that UCI is going to move in right away, but I just wanted to get your take on, now that the UCI has officially said, okay, yeah, we're in on this gravel thing, on this off-road thing, and we want to do a series. And I wouldn't doubt that they would approach you and say, geez, we'd love to have Unbound be part of this series. What's your thought on the movement by this major governing body into an area that you have successfully managed for many years?
My thought is that, we've known for a while that the UCI is coming. We've been hearing this, it's going to happen. We have not been approached by the UCI particularly, but we've been approached by USA Cycling, who was partnering with and working with the UCI to bring this to life. The intent has been, and I think you probably saw in that announcement, that they had planned to have that event be in North America. Ironically, they went and hired a company out of Belgium to help them develop it or find the right event, which I'm not sure that a company out of Belgium knows what the spirit of gravel in North America really feels like, but maybe they don't really care. I don't know. I think from our perspective, listen, it's coming with or without us. To be honest, I have zero interest in having any of our events be a qualifier for that event, and it might come across a little smug, but I might be interested in letting them, letting their gravel world championships be a qualifier for Unbound. Maybe I might be able to carve out a few slots for them, but I'm just kidding. That's my smug and arrogant reaction. But if it gets more people riding bikes, that is fantastic. If they come in and they plunk that thing down on a date and a course that impacts all of the great events that are happening here in the United States, then I don't like it. I don't think USA Cycling should be in the business of competing with all of the events that they are, that they are trying to get to become their constituency, basically, right? They're asking for ways, and I've offered ideas and thoughts on how we could support USA Cycling and what they are trying to do. As you both know, I don't have an interest in sanctioning our events. I don't think we need to provide that. I don't think we need that rule book, and we don't need to provide that insurance to our participants and all the things that come along with sanctioning and that added expense, to be honest with you. But I want to figure out a way. I've talked to USA Cycling multiple times recently, and I really want to figure out a way to support what they are doing. But I don't like the idea of them coming in and putting down an event that's going to compete with one of our events or any of the other fantastic gravel events that are happening out there, because those events are the lifeblood of what's happening with gravel in North America. And they're ours and everybody else's that all the fantastic events out there. It's Amy Charity's event at SBT. It's Rebecca's event in Idaho. It's Amanda Naumann's event in Mammoth. It's Pete Stetina trying to get his event off the ground. It's Crusher. It's all there's phenomenal events all over the country, and for them to put an event that's going to compete with any one of it will compete with somebody. It will draw athletes away from someone's event, and that piece I don't like. Will it be good? So as I said, if it cannibalizes the current kind of pool of riders, that's a bad thing. If we see exponentially more riders starting to ride bikes and ride gravel bikes and mountain bikes off-road because this world championships comes here, well, that's a good thing. That's good for the industry. But I think it's going to be hard to tie because the growth is already happening, and if it continues to happen, it's going to be hard to say it was because the UCI created a gravel world championships in the United States. I don't know that we're going to be able to attribute the growth to that. I think what they're going to try and do is they're going to try and basically capitalize on the growth,
Well, they've couched it under their Cycling for All kind of initiative, which includes their Gran Fondo series. And they have said that, their world championships, they want it to be in the U.S., which is, you're right, Kimo, that brings up the potential for a conflict somewhere with the current calendar. And look, the reason why a lot of us came to events, beginning with the LT100 and moving through a lot of these gravel events, is the lack of a governing body. We got to decide what the rules were. We decided where our playgrounds were, what the courses would look like. Now, has that been a smooth road the whole way? No, of course it's gravel. It's going to be a bumpy road, both literally and figuratively here. Which brings me kind of my next point here. And what do we do then to say to ourselves, look, we have control of this? As you've seen, there's been a growth of pros into the sport, and at times there have been issues at the front of the race regarding the pros, regarding the competitive nature that they bring. Is it up to organizers now, the ones that are trying to stay autonomous, to come up and be stronger about the rules they set? Do we need rules? I know it's kind of a vague and weird and wild question, but how do we proceed if we want to remain autonomous and keep the UCIs and the USACs at arm's length?
Let's talk about the rules issue. it's been successful. The growth we have seen has happened under this, through this period of, or under this kind of spirit of less rules, the better, right? And I think, I'm not naive enough to think that it's going to continue that way forever. There are going to have to be, at some point, I believe there will have to be rules put in place. You've probably heard and read some of the controversy over the last few weeks, particularly kind of pointed at the women at the front end of the gravel cycling events, and the controversy over whether women should be, there should be men to pull, women drafting off of men in races, or particularly teams, assembling guys to put out there to pull females to win races and whatnot. And, listen, unfortunately, it's what's going to happen when you have a mass participation event. If you start a whole bunch of people together, there are going to be, I've been out there and ridden in some of these events, and I've sat on a girl's wheel. It happens both directions, and so guys will pull girls, and girls will pull guys. It's part of mass participation. And so, are there some some guardrails that could be put in place? Maybe. There's a really, really strong, influential group of women that are at the we'll call it the pointy end of the spear in the space right now that have been collaborating and working together, and they'd like to work with all of the event promoters and come up with some solutions to solve that. I'll tell you that from my perspective, we're talking about, and I was talking to Pete Stetlin last night about this. We are talking about, I'm going to just say 10 to 20 women and 10 to 20 men at any of these races. And that's probably being generous, but we're talking about 10 to 20 women and 10 to 20 men at each of these races who can contend for the win or to be on the podium, let's say. Last time I checked, we're going to have close to 30,000 people do our cycling events next year. I'm much more worried about the other 29,960 people doing our cycling races next year, our events next year, than I am about the 10 to 20 men and the 10 to 20 women that are going to be at the front. Now, when I say that, I want to be careful, because I do believe, and I was the one that worked with EF to get them to come to what was Dirty Kansas 2 years ago, which is now Unbound. They came out and they brought 3 EF cyclists out there, created a ton of buzz, brought a lot of media attention, unbelievable media attention for that race. And then since then, we've invited, they've been to Leadville, they've been to a number of our events, and a number of other pro cyclists from World Tour pro teams showing up at the events. I think it's great for cycling. I think what cycling needs in North America, to go along with the growth that we're seeing, we need more fandom. We need more fans excited about what's happening in cycling, because without that, it doesn't become a spectator sport. It isn't traditionally a spectator sport. There's no race in North America where you get 1 million people on the side of the road like you get on the Alpe d'Huez when the Tour goes up there. And so we need to create more fandom in the US. And so I think creating, telling the story about that exciting front of the race is awesome. I don't think it's any more important than telling the story about the middle of the pack person or the very last person that finishes. I think they're all great stories. And I think where we need to improve, and we talk about this a lot, and you're going to hear more about this going into next year. We're going to be live streaming a number of our events next year, including, fingers crossed, including Leadville. And part of that live stream is going to be pre-produced content that's stories about the everyday average Joe and Josette athlete that are out there doing the event, that have overcome something to get there, that DEI athletes. There are just phenomenal stories about amazing individuals that are doing these events that to me are a lot more compelling than just the pros. But the pros are super important too. And if we can help it, with what we're doing in cycling, if we can have a positive impact for the pros, create more opportunities for pros for people to be able to ride their bike professionally, that's good for the sport. But it's also good for us to be telling these everyday, average athlete stories. So that's really where we're going to focus our attention this next year is is creating those kind of opportunities. I think having the pros at the race I think it's phenomenal. I think it's great. We're hearing more and more about pros that are going to drop their UCI license and come show up at our events next year. All of this is going to happen kind of despite what the UCI is doing. Will what the UCI does be a positive impact? I really think that remains to be seen.
Let's take that 1 year that you're looking forward and, talking a little bit about changes that are coming in the near term and extend that out. We asked Tamara this when we had her on the show. Would love to have your thoughts too. 5 years from now, what do you imagine the Leadville 100 in particular, but all of the Leadville race series as being? What changes? What stays the same?
Well, a couple things. If 5 years from now, what doesn't change is Marilee and Ken. Marilee's still there giving everybody a hug when they come across the finish line. We missed them this year. And we got to get them back. And I'll tell you, Cole stepped in and has just did an amazing job this year without Ken and Marilee there for both the hundreds. So that doesn't change. When you come there, you are part of the Leadville family and you feel it. And I hope that never changes. One change might be that I hopefully I'm not here. But people aren't coming to Leadville to see me anyways. But no, I'm kidding. I'm hoping that I've got retirement in my future. So, across the country, I think my hope is that we can get back to growing the Leadville qualifying series in a way that puts those events on the map as just really cool, unique individual events and individual experiences that just happen to be a qualifier for Leadville. Want people to know that they can go there and they've got an opportunity to get into Leadville either by going fast on their bike or by finishing the race, as we do now with the lottery at the end of every one of those races. It's just a way for anybody that can get out there, throw their leg over a bike and finish that race. They've got an opportunity to get in and race Leadville. And so I think I'd like to see more qualifiers in the series. I'd like to see better participation in those qualifiers because they're just great. They're just great events. And we've got some work to do on those events, I think, to really, as I mentioned earlier, we've got to go back and we've got to add to the experience of those events. But they are all phenomenal events. So, I think you just see, Leadville itself, we're constrained. Every event in Leadville this summer, bike and run, sold out. Every camp, every running event, every bike event, they all sold out. So we're a little bit constrained on how many people we can welcome into Leadville, and I don't think that's going to change. I don't think we're ever going to be able to have 3,000 or 4,000 people ride the Leadville 100 mountain bike race. I think that would be an injustice to the experience. So I don't think you'll see a lot of changes up in Leadville. I think you'll see more changes at potentially and hopefully with some of the qualifying events over the next few years.
Kimo, always fantastic talking with you. Enjoyed hearing about what's going on in your life, what's going on in the future for both the race and for the series. Let's be sure to talk again soon.
Thanks again to Kimo Seymour for joining us. Look forward to seeing him on the start line next year. Fatty, I have a little audio example of just how fast Leadville racer Kimo Seymour is. Here goes.
Your first place pro female 2019 Stages Cycling 100, Rose Grant. And there's Kimo Seymour with the Lifetime crew, Senior VP of Media and Events. And as always in that mix, Matt Crowley from Draper, Utah.
Wow, that's Kimo coming in just behind the 2019 women's winner, Rose Grant. She's no slouch. Anyone who's heard our show recently knows she is remarkably fast. Now, Rose, who's on with us, and that's just episode 23 of this season. Go back and listen if you haven't. She crossed the line in 7 hours and 36 minutes. If Kimo is behind her, he is not playing around when he lines it up at Leadville.
Yep, not bad. And we really like also what Kimo had to say about the UCI's move into the dirt and how the pros fit in with citizen racing. Thanks again, Kimo, for sharing your thoughts. I'm constantly learning about products from our friends at Shimano.
Yeah, just getting your head around all the mountain bike gear Shimano has is pretty tough. That's why I keep it simple. XTR. I just put XTR on everything. I set it, race it, and forget it.
Of course, there's a whole world beyond racing. There are thousands of riders out there who are looking for stuff to hold up and last. Those riders should consider, in the XT and Dior lines, something called Link Glide. Now, Link Glide stuff is really good if you're hard on gear or if you're equipping an e-bike. Link Glide is a system. So Shimano says the shifter, chain, rear derailleur, and cassette must come from the same Link Glide family. It's available in 10 or 11 speed. The cassette, we understand, lasts 3 times longer. And if need be, the smaller cogs can be replaced individually since these are the ones that wear out first on high torque bikes.
Yeah, not a bad idea. And I maybe should look into that. I am hard on bikes. Shimano is always thinking. To check out the Link Glide groups in the XT and Dior lines, go to bike.shimano.com. Let's go ahead and close out the show with another big thank you to our guest, Kimo Seymour. Kimo, I'm going to find your wheel next August, and then I'm going to immediately lose it. Kimo really knows how to get around the Leadville course.
And I will make good on my rude behavior and offer Kimo a feed as he comes flying into Twin Lakes.
Nice.
For now, you can hear from me and Fatty on social media. Fatty's on Twitter as @FatCyclist, and I am on Instagram @MichaelHoughton. Of course, we're both on the Facebook Leadville 100 Mountain Bike Participants page.
If you like this show, go to wherever you listen and give us a 5-star rating. Write us a review. To see all the ways you can find the show, it is a super easy to remember URL, leadville.fm.
Good luck in your riding, racing, and recovery. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you at the 2022 starting line.